So are we ready? Okay, so I'm going to push this button. Oop. Okay, so thank you so much for this. I'm honored to be in the Hall of Fame. I've dreamed about it since I was a little wee quilter. This is my daddy, Gino Pasquini. He was in the service, and this is my mom, and she was always waiting for him to come home. Well, he came home, and I have 7 brothers and sisters, and he was kind of an artist. That's probably too small to see, but he would make Christmas cards. And this one is, Santa's helpers will be late if they depend on Sister Kate. And I'm the little one reaching over and getting in all of the trouble. So, but he would set up these little picture vignettes. We'd, chairs together and a board, and we put our arms on it, and then he'd draw the little car, or my mother made all of our Christmas stockings. And so the littlest one in this one is, I think, Meg, and she's in her stocking on oldest brother Larry's lap. And, another little. So my dad enjoyed drawing, kind of backyard. Those magazines, you can find those little ads for taking drawing classes. So he did all those, and so he did a lot of drawing. So I think I got some of that from my dad. And so there we are, my poor mom. My mom was beautiful, but she always looked like, we're rolling pennies or something. We did a lot of camping. I'm the little one in the front here eating the watermelon. We went over to my dad's family. There's Nono and Nona and Siafi and Auntie Alma. And there's me and my mom. I'm leaning on my mom's shoulder. So we always had these big Italian dinner, and he raised pigeons, and we all loved the pigeons. But then we'd have dinner, and they called it squab. And then somebody slipped and told us we were eating the pigeons. That didn't go over very well at all. And we went camping. I love this picture because we all wore glasses. We look like a bunch of nerds, but that was us. And as we got older, we get together every year and have family reunion, and I'm the camp leader, of course, and we do painting lessons, or we do different crafts, and we're getting older and grayer, but we still keep doing it. I was a painter before I was a quilter. I did a lot of oil painting using a palette knife. I didn't like to use a paintbrush, so this is all done with a palette knife, as well as this. This is George Harrison and Bob Dylan off the album cover, A Concert for Bangladesh. So I just enjoyed copying everything, and little pen and ink. So I relate the other paintings for the texture, like I like to work with fabric, and then these fine pen and inks for the details of the quilting, and so that's how it all kind of relates. 1978, I made my first quilt, and it was a sampler quilt. Then in 1979, I opened a quilt shop, Katie's Quilt Shop in Eureka. Had that for about 5 years. I finally took a workshop from my hero, Michael James, and he at the class said, "You're an artist, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And "You know how to make a quilt, don't you?" I said, "Yeah." "Well, why aren't you designing your own stuff?" So that was my aha moment, and I started doing. This was the one I did in his workshop. It's called Starting Point. It was a starting point of me going on and doing quilts. And then another workshop with Michael, I learned curve piecing, and then I put what I learned from both those. This is the same design as the little red one, and what I learned about piecing curves and things together to make this. So I've always worked in series, so this is the mandala, start of the mandala series, and so that's the little red one, and it would be, the pieced one is twice as big. And so another one, and there was the little whole cloth. So I do a whole cloth and then translate that into a pieced version. One of the first people I met when I started out was Yvonne Porcella, who became a very big mentor as well, and that's Sonia Lee Barrington. So I'm going to drop some names here, but these are the people that encouraged me along the way. So we were at one of the first big conferences that they did, which was the West Coast Quilters Conference, and it was in Oregon somewhere. So we have Yvonne Porcella, and she brought all of her garments for a fashion show. So we're out by the pool, and we're going to model. Yvonne Porcella, me in one of her garments, Virginia Avery, Chris Wolfe Edmonds, and Beth Gutchin, who are all definitely the dinosaurs of the quilt world, the ones who brought the art quilt into the traditional quilt format. And me sitting with Virginia Avery as just a newbie. I wasn't a teacher. I was just there with Yvonne and Sonia, and I sat with her at a teacher's get-together in the room afterwards, after class, and just bonded with that woman. Love her so much. Played piano at my wedding. We have been, anyway, she was saying, do your thing. Go out there and do it. So that's my favorite picture of Virginia Avery. But these are my three besties: Yvonne Priscilla, Virginia Avery, and Jean Ray Lowry. And they all wore these big red glasses wherever they went. So it was really fun to get that picture of the three of these very first in the art quilt world. And then I was on the Carol Duvall show. That was a lot of fun. And I just did my series. This was the three-dimensional design. Then I went into working with isometric perspective. And Virginia Avery was a jazz pianist. And she'd get together with these old guys, and they'd have one night a month, they'd get together and play. And this is in New York. One time I was in New York, and I went with Donna Wilder, who you all met the other day, and me and Donna went and got to listen to them sit and play it was fabulous. It was just amazing. They'd put all this newspaper down because she had these really old carpets, and the guys playing the trombones, those things get a little drippy, so she'd put her little newspapers out and protect her carpet. And she always wore "It's Okay" button on her. I just love that woman. And then another dear friend, Libby Lehman, and her mother, Catherine Anthony. Libby has had aneurysm, but she's still going strong and doing wonderful things. So this is, every year I go to Houston Quilt Festival and I make a date to see Libby. And Doreen Speckman, I taught on one of her cruises, and she was just the greatest woman. She's passed away. And we have Terry Mangett and Velda Newman came out to visit me once, and, a lot of selfies. I went to Terry Mangett's wedding. Michael James and his wife Linda were there, and Bill and Kay Burlingham were also there. Nicole was there too. You and your husband were at that wedding. So I did isometric perspective, playing with the baby blocks, putting holes and poles and things through them. That was the cover of my isometric perspective book. I kind of go through a series and then write a book about it. These are my kids. We got Bob 3, Jessica, and Brad. And then Fractured Landscapes was a big thing for me, living up in the redwood trees. I moved to Santa Fe for 25 years and then moved back. I've been back, 8 years now? 8 or 9 years? I just love the redwood trees. So back there. From Chaco Canyon. This was one of my quilts that was one of the 100 quilts of the 20th century. It was lost in shipping for 9 months and then finally recovered from a salvage company. It was shipped in a UPS, and if you send your quilts and they get the box breaks or something like that, I had a label on it that had my name and city and state, so the salvage guy could call me. And, after 9 months of not knowing where this quilt was, says, "I think I have your quilt." And so we found it, and I said, "Well, it was stolen." And he said, "Well, then I don't know what we're talking about." I said, "Well, what would you like?" He said, "How much did you sell it for?" Well, I didn't tell the truth. And he said, "Well, if you give me $100, I'll send it back to you." So I bought it back for $100 and got it back to Jack Walsh, who owned it, and it was lost in shipping. Anyway, so it came back. I think it was one of the 100 quilts of the 20th century because it had such a story that went with it. I used to do a little booth. I used to silk screen fabric. Now I design for Free Spirit Fabric, so I don't have to be out there on my little silk screen. But I would have this booth. Randallin would help me in the booth a lot, and so we'd have my little bundles of fabric and my crazy clothes and my crazy quilts. I do a lot of things from photographs or from paintings. This is one that I did from grapes on Randolyn's back porch, and it's in the collection, the Hendricks collection. Ghost layers and color gouaches, which is the class I taught here. It starts with a photograph, you do a drawing of it, then you do ghosts or just something that's going to float in and out of the surface. In this case, it was the light from the ladder in the background and the adobe bricks. And then a little painting to change the color because I don't really like to work in beige. And then the quilt itself. This is from the Randolyn collection. And so another one I did, Chaco Canyon, lots of pieces. I turn all my edges, so everything's all turned, little tiny pieces, which day 2 of class this time, we struggled through till day 4 when they thought, well, this might be a pretty good way of doing it. But it took a little while to convince them. I just like to take all sorts of strange things. I play cards. When I lived in Santa Fe, my friend there was Sherry Bradley. She designed my house and made my beautiful studio, and we played cribbage a lot. So one day she had all these glass crafts, and so we took pictures, and then I made it into this class, trying to see if I could make opaque fabric look like glass. So this is also ghost layers, picture of the slot canyons, the drawing, the ghosts, sort of circles and lines, and then the painting. And this is in the Nebraska Museum. Redwoods, always go back to the redwoods. Love to do those redwoods, inspiration. A trip to Sedona, Arizona with Randolyn, and I had these two, when you used to get your film on a little strip and you'd pick one and you get your little 6-inch ones, and then you blew them up, and just laying one picture on top of the other on the way to the studio, I thought, well, that's a great design. So I started this cubing thing where I used 2 different sizes of one picture. Painting, blind painting, do this in class, blindfold everybody, give them a palette, and they paint with brush to music, pick a little spot, make it into a quilt. That was really fun, so there's a couple of those. Usually I do 1 quilt for each exercise in the book, but I really like this blind painting and then making it into a quilt. So another little painting and then translating it to fabric. And then a bad painting, cut it into squares, rearrange it, and it'll make a quilt. I was given the Silver Star Award at Houston one year, and then my paintings were up. My quilts were up of my paintings. And there's Yvonne and I doing the Silver Star. So she was the speaker to introduce me to the Silver Star salute. This was commissioned by the Hendricks. I came up, painted on their back porch the trident, and then made that into a quilt, which is in the registration. And then they said, that one worked out pretty good. How about if you make one for up here? So that's right on the other side of that wall. So these were, I think 2 of the photographs were John's, and one of them was mine. I put it together to create this composition and then quilted it in the long rectangles. It's the biggest thing I've ever made. Took over a year. But I loved making it for you guys. Then I wanted to do something simple for a place where I had taught years and years and years, and I taught them everything I knew, and I thought, I like making log cabins, but that's not really my style, so how could I make log cabins more artful? And Sandy Chapin was in my class, and she did a log cabin from a photograph, a famous painting, and I said, can I use that idea, Sandy? And you said, sure. And so I started kind of mimicking her, but taking a photograph, putting a grid on it, and then making it in log cabin blocks. So thank you, Sandy, for giving me that whole exploration. This is a painting of mine that I also did as a log cabin. A poster on a wall in New York that was falling apart that I created this way. When I moved back to Eureka, I went to a beach we used to hang out at when we were kids, and I photographed this maypole getting closer and closer until I liked the composition, and then I created it as a log cabin. Watercolor, I never paint the whole thing well, but I can crop and find a neat little spot within the painting and then make that into a quilt. And then I started painting on canvas, which is what I'm doing here, and making the quilt of the canvas and then putting the canvas in the quilt. So that's both. It's mixed media. It's got a acrylic painted canvas. Same thing. This is the painting, and then the little center part of the painting is put into the quilt, and the quilt is made to look like the painting. Here's 3 paintings. I couldn't cut them up. I couldn't figure out what to do with them. So I like the white one. So I put the other paintings into those little spaces in the yellow and the black. More paintings. Just love paintings and cutting them up. You don't have to do the whole thing good because you're going to cut it up and only use the good parts. So this was from the graffiti series. So then I had black ultra suede to do the graffiti across it. So I have several of those. And then sometimes I don't know what to do, but I find an old painting, and so then I make that into a quilt. Sometimes it starts a series, and sometimes it's just one. This was just one. This was difficult. And then watercolor, using rubber cement, painting, and then making it into a quilt. So I like marrying the painting that I love to do and the quilting. This is the first Allegre retreat. The first time Randy ran it, my best friend. I love this picture. And now I'm doing paintings, making them into quilts. I like, each little different color you're seeing is a different painting that was then cut up, and then I make it into a quilt. So you can see here, there's the painting, and I do a line drawing of it, and then all that becomes the templates that are made out of fabric. And there's the quilt. My favorite teacher, Jim Sullivan, who encouraged me through high school, went back and saw him a few years ago and thanked him for putting me on this path. And another art school teacher, Floyd Batiga, they came to a show I had at the museum in Eureka. One of my latest quilts from the Chapin collection. And I get together with I call them my 3 sisters, my cousin Holly, my sister Terry, and me, and we make red, white, and blue quilts for the veterans. And then we bring them to Crystal, and she lays her hands on and decides what veteran will get it because of the colors and what she feels. It's just a really one. I did it Otter. I don't know if I showed this last time, so I'm going to go. I think I did, so I'm going to go quick. But I did, you know how they have the cows, the painted horses. Well, we did otters in Humboldt County. And so I picked up my otter, and it was in a box, and I have claustrophobia, so I thought it would too. So I got it out of the box, drove it home, and this is Dolores. And this is where Dolores, that was the poster, and this is where Dolores lives for me now. That's my fabric done in the cathedral windows that Lisa Ellis made for me. So they all go together. My storage, until my niece, who is a Marie Kondo organizer, fixed it. Took weeks. And then my last work that I'm doing is grid work, where I take a painting that I've done, I cut it up I create each block separately and then sew it together with, this is another painting that was gridded out, another painting that was gridded out, and then just another painting that was made into a quilt. COVID, I got 3 series done in the 2 years of COVID. And then I had a show at the Nebraska Art Museum, and my brother Larry, who had passed away. So we are now just 6, but he was there for that. And there's Lainey, and Joseph, and my cousin Holly. And then a painting that became a quilt, summer, a painting that became a quilt, winter. And then my last series, these are the first black and white and red, black and white and yellow bees. That's my iris. And black and white and violet iris. And then these are the next 3 in the series. Black and white and orange, black and white and green with envy, and black and white and blue moon. And then Harry. And Harry always has his Frisbee. We didn't even bring them because all he does is want you to throw his frisbee. So there you go. Thank you very much. And then I don't know what. Thank you.